Hey, welcome back. This is Best RPG Ever, and in my journey to play through every RPG ever to find out which is the best, I played Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven. As always, we'll go through some different aspects of the game, talking about each one, how I feel, and then at the end, we'll rank it against all the other RPGs I've played so far. I guess we'll get into it. The gameplay. What did I think about the gameplay? Well, the battle system, it's very traditional. This is a remake of a much older RPG, Romancing Saga 2. Came out on the Super Nintendo, I think? Pretty sure, yeah. And they didn't do a whole lot to mix it up gameplay-wise. It's, traditional turn-based battles, not a whole lot of systems, at least compared to something like Xenoblade Chronicles X. I think the one thing they did add is like a bar where if you continuously attack the enemy's weak point, whatever type of weapon or element they're weak to, eventually you'll charge up to like this all-out attack. That's like the main gimmick, I guess, of this game. Well, at least in regards to in-battle stuff, that's the main gimmick, I guess, is you want to attack the enemy's weak point so you can build up to this special attack that uses multiple party members in sequence, and it'll like ramp up their damage crazy. Something that's unique about this game is that there's no traditional level system. There's no XP. Well, there's kind of XP, but there's no you don't go from level 19 to 20 and then all your stats get a raise. What happens is, you use certain weapons to defeat enemies, and then when you defeat them, when the battle's over, based on what weapons and types of spells you used, those will rank up. Skyrim-esque. Elder Scrolls-esque, I guess I should say. Not just Skyrim. Each weapon type and spell element has a level per class. So, there's different classes you can recruit. And each of those classes will have a certain proficiency in each, I don't know what you'd call it, I guess weapon type and spell. So, I'm trying to think, like the mage will have high magic levels, and it'll also have maybe one weapon type that's kind of a higher level. But then, there's the archer, and then I'll have a super high bow level. And you could theoretically, use fire spells in the archer. You can use anything on any character, and if you use it long enough, it eventually will level up to be proficient. Do I like that? I've always been drawn to the classic RPG level system, where you get XP, you level up, your stats go up, maybe you learn certain spells at level 15, level 20. I have a fondness for that, archetype. And, I guess I can respect developers that try to do something different. Like Chrono Cross, they were trying something different with the level system in that game and the spells and all that. This game does something kinda different. I guess Chrono Cross, in regards to how similar it is to a traditional RPG battle system, it knocks it out of the park. They were swinging for the fences with that, I should say. Because it's so different. It's so different from even just Chrono Trigger. It's out there. It's weird. And I think it works. So they were swinging for the fences with that. And with Romancing Saga 2, in regards to trying to make an RPG battle system that's different from the others, they didn't swing for the fences. Okay, my baseball analogy is kind of breaking. They swung it a little bit. Kind of hard, but not too hard. They definitely weren't aiming for the fences. You still got stats, you still kind of got level ups, still got spells and attacks and weapon types and all that. It's just different enough to give the game its own unique feel in regards to leveling up and choosing what to level up. You gotta be conscious about, okay, I'm gonna use this weapon type and I'm gonna stick to it. I'm not gonna use a bunch of different weapon types on one character. Jack of all trades, master of none. You want your characters to be specialized. You can have 5 of them in battle. So you can have each of them, you got your sword character. Each character can actually have 2 weapons. So maybe you'll have a main weapon that one character is good with, and then it'll have a backup that's kind of good. I guess to talk about the classes, I like when RPGs have classes. I love archetypes in RPGs. I love having an archer. I love having a lancer with a spear. You know, you got the mage, you got the healer. I just love the traditional stuff like that in my RPGs. And this game has those. Of course, it has the weird classes like the dancer, the nomad. Forget what makes the nomad special. There's all kinds of other weird classes, like there's like a salamander race you can recruit. Each class has its own thing it's kind of geared towards. So like the salamander special ability is that it takes reduced damage from fire attacks. I'm pretty sure. And I think there's 40 classes, is that right? There's a lot. If it's not 40, it's close. It's up there. And I guess what makes each of them unique is the abilities. And it's fun to see those abilities. Like, these are fun abilities. It's not like does 10% more damage. There's one class, like the tank or whatever it's called. It's one of the first you get in the game. It has an ability that has a 40% chance, when it's attacked, to parry that attack and take no damage. 40%. It's a big number. It's not no 10% chance. There's one ability that when you use an item, instead of affecting one person, it affects the whole party. And healing the whole party is hard in this game, so that ability is very useful. So yeah, there's a lot of fun, unique abilities, and they're unique. I want to reiterate that, they're unique. I hate skill trees that are like, does 5% more damage? You can get that 5 times, so they do 25% more damage. I hate upgrades like that, they're so boring. But that, 40% chance to parry an attack, that's big. You feel that. 40% increase is a number you can feel. So yeah, the abilities are fun. That's what make each class feel unique. And then if you use that class enough, you unlock that ability to use on other classes. So, it's fun. Getting classes and upgrading them, it's fun. I guess this is something we'll probably talk about throughout all the other sections, but specifically gameplay-wise, I guess I need to introduce this. This game has a generation system, where you're introduced to the characters, and then you play for a bit, and then after maybe 5-6 hours, you'll fight a powerful boss, and then the screen will fade to black. Up on the screen pops 100 years later. All the characters you've known and played as for the past, 5 hours, they're dead. You gotta pick a new emperor to play as, and then you gotta go to the tavern to recruit new party members. Now that might sound crazy, but progression isn't tied to the characters, it's tied to the class. So if you had an archer in the last generation and you used them a lot, as soon as you, I was going to say reincarnate, but that's not right. As soon as you're born into this new era, you can immediately recruit an archer again, and they'll, still have their high bow stat. How does that affect the gameplay? Doesn't really affect the battle system that much. I guess I'll have more to say about it in the story and the character section. I guess it kind of manifests some ways in that the skills you learn and the spells and all that. We'll talk about more of the generation stuff later, because that's where it really impacts this game and how I feel about it. This is a big one. This game is too hard. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want a game to be a walk in the park. I don't want it to be super easy. But if I could prefer a game to lean towards being too easy or too hard, I think I'd prefer it to lean towards being too easy. I like the gameplay in RPGs, don't get me wrong. I like battling, I like the theorizing, the strategizing. I like having to equip certain things and think about what armor goes on what person and what order to place them in the party. I think that's fun, that's part of what I like about the genre. But the main thing I like about the genre is the story, it's the characters, is the world. It's everything basically surrounding the gameplay. And if the gameplay can get in the way of me enjoying the story, enjoying the characters, then it starts to kind of annoy me. That's why I kind of prefer a game to lean towards being too easy. Sorry, an RPG, not a game. I like Doom Eternal. That game's hard, it's difficult. But that's why I'm there. I'm there to enjoy that difficulty, to get in the zone. You can't really get in the zone with an RPG. Except for, at least for me, I can with the story. And that's what I get out of RPGs, and if a game is too hard, it takes away from my enjoyment of the stuff I actually do like. And this game was a little too hard for me. Now granted, I did start playing on the hardest difficulty you can when you first boot up the game, which is hard. There are difficulties you unlock later after beating the game and New Game Plus and all that. I played on hard because I saw there was a trophy you get for beating the game on hard. So I was like, sure, why not? I'll just try it. And if I have such a hard time later, I can bump it down. But the first couple hours, I didn't actually think it was that big of a deal. I was going through it just fine. I could kind of notice where it felt the game was challenging me, but it wasn't hard. It wasn't difficult. And, 5, 6, like 9 hours in, I was like, okay, it's getting a little hard. I reached one boss, I think, that was like actually difficult. It was like giving me trouble. I was like, okay, I kind of want to drop this down to normal difficulty. So I did. I dropped it down to normal. And at that point I was like, okay, I don't got anything to prove to anyone. I don't have to beat this on hard. If I really want the trophy for beating the game on hard, I can do a New Game Plus thing. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to beat it on normal, whatever. And then another boss hit me. I was like, man, this is too hard. I was like, okay, I must be doing something wrong. Or maybe just my build sucks. Sometimes it happens with me in games where I'm just playing the game normally and I'm having a good time, and then I hit a wall and I'm feeling like I have this feeling in the back of my head that maybe I did something wrong. Maybe my build is just fundamentally broken in some way that I can't see. It happened with a game I played recently. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was Chrono Cross with one of the super secret hard bosses, which, if it's a hard boss, I guess it makes sense, but this wasn't a boss in this game this wasn't a secret, optional boss I couldn't get past. It was like a main story progression thing. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll drop it to casual. I'll drop it to the casual difficulty. And that, kind of stings a bit. I'm not a difficulty freak. I don't want to play everything on the hardest thing possible, but it does kind of sting a bit having to drop it to casual. Because I'm not a casual. But maybe I am, whatever. If the game deems it so, who am I to argue with it? So I played through on casual and everything was going fine. It was going incredibly fine. It was breezing through the game. So I was like, okay, screw this. I'm not fighting all these enemies. I'm going to run around them. Because this isn't like a random encounters RPG. This is an RPG where enemies are in the field and they'll see you and they'll beeline it to you. But if you got parkour skills, you can run around them. So I started doing that, like the last third of the game. I did a lot, actually. And I reached the final boss, and I played through all that. Didn't have any problems. I reached the final boss, and it was a wall. It was incredibly difficult. I could not beat it. I could tell the damage I was doing, the damage I was taking. I just was not in the right place for where I needed to be. It was too hard. That was on casual, the easiest difficulty, and it was still too much for me. So I was like, oh my god, what did I do wrong? And then, after some self-reflection, I was like, okay, I did skip a lot of the fights at the later third of the game. That's on me. When I reach the end of a game, I just want to roll the credits as soon as possible. I don't like goofing around. I just want to conclude the story. And in this game, that led to me skipping a lot of fights that, while I did say this game doesn't have, traditional levels, you don't get XP in fights, but you still do level up your weapons and your spells. That's how you do more damage, is obviously through the equipment that you equip, but also through your proficiency in those weapons, in those spells. And me skipping a lot of the fights in the later third of the game, that led to me being super under-quote, leveled for the final boss in casual difficulty. And I dropped the game. Almost. A little bit of a surprise for you. This is actually my second time recording this. Last week or so, I actually recorded a full rambling video for this game. I had dropped the game at that point. I was like, you know what? I've reached the final boss. I do not want to grind. I'm done. I'm content just leaving it where it is. I guess, let me go back to the beginning. Why didn't I want to grind? I guess I reached the final boss. It was just overwhelming. I was taking way too much damage. I wasn't doing nearly enough damage. It just felt like I had no clear goal to work towards. I didn't know what to grind for. Because in this game, you kind of gotta have a purpose to grind. You can't just mindlessly do it. You gotta grind with like the right weapons and the right spells. And I guess I kind of knew what I needed to do, but it didn't speak to me. You know, in Chrono Trigger or something, you know, you got a level. You know, Chrono was level 50. I guess maybe that's not the best example. Like Pokemon. In Pokemon, if you go to fight a gym and it's too difficult, you know, if your Pikachu is dying to a level 50 Venusaur or whatever, you can say, okay, if that Venusaur is level 50, and I'm level, 47, if I go up to like 52-ish, 53, I'll be fine. That's like a super clear goal. And this game didn't really have that. Didn't really have a clear goal for me to work towards. And that's really what I need for me to be able to want to grind in a game. And I didn't have that here. I was just not interested in grinding. I was done playing this game. And honestly, I just lost interest. And I'm usually like this with games. Like, I can feel the momentum picking up towards the end of a game. I'm sure you guys can too when, it's the closing up on the end of the third act of the story, and things are starting to wrap up, and you can really feel the push for the characters to finish things. And when a game brings that to a halt for me, it's really hard for me to finish it. Think about like the writing and the gameplay and the music and like the environmental design. All of that towards the end of the game is built up to make it like crescendo. You emotionally want it to come to an end. And having a fight where it's just a brick wall and it's too hard and you gotta go back, you gotta go out into the world and grind for like 4 hours doing random side quests and just killing enemies, that stops the momentum. It sucks, man. And when a game does that, I have such a hard time finishing it. So I didn't at the time. I dropped it. I recorded a full video like I'm recording right now. I recorded a full one of these of me talking about this game and how I didn't finish it, and that sucks. I was sad with that. I was sad that this game beat me. But, I gave it a week or so. I'd actually started playing another game because I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm gonna start playing the next RPG for this channel, and that's that. And this game I did decide to play, we'll talk about it later. It's not like a traditional turn-based battle thing. So I got like 5 hours into that, and then I was like, you know what? Kind of want like a classic turn-based RPG to play alongside this more action-y based one. So I was looking at the games I got, and I found one. So I was like, okay, take it out of the shrink wrap, put the disc in the PlayStation, let it update, let it copy to the hard drive and all that. Solid state drive, sorry. Let it copy. And then I sat down, had the controller in my hand, and I was just staring at the PlayStation 5 home screen. And I saw the game I was about to play, and then just to the right of that, I saw Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. And I just kept like side-eyeing it. I'm like, could start this game, I just put the disc in, but I felt like it was going to eat at me that I didn't finish Romancing Saga 2. That I'd always see that icon there for a good long while, and I'd definitely see it sitting on my shelf, the disc. I was like, shit, man. I gotta finish that game. So I did it. I was completely ready to start playing a new RPG, but I took that disc out, put it back in its case, put back in Romancing Saga 2, and I got to work. I played some quests that I skipped over before. I actually went back through some of the dungeons that I went through before. I went back to the beginning and ran through them again, killing all those enemies I skipped past earlier. And, at various points throughout that, I was like, okay, can I defeat the final boss now? Okay, no, I can't. So I went back and go do some more quests. Can I do it now? No, go and do some more. And then finally, I had grinded enough. I could see that I had improved. And I was fighting this boss. I was like, oh my god, this is so difficult, but I think I just leveled up enough, and boom. Final blow, killed it. Game over. Oh man, that was so satisfying. I beat that boss by the skin of my teeth. When it comes to difficult fights in games, I'm usually not one to feel like that. I'm not one to have this to feel this feeling of triumph. I'm usually just like, ugh, that sucked. Wish that fight would have been easier. But in this game, I actually felt like accomplishment. I was glad I went back and did it. I felt good. Unironically, the break taker, that meme, that's me. I hate that that's me, because when I was done with this game at first, I was like, I just don't want to play this game. I don't want to see it. I don't even want to think about this game anymore. I just want it out of my sight. And it was for a little bit, for like a week or so. I played this new RPG and I was having fun with that. But in the back of my mind, I was still craving it. I was still craving Romancing Saga 2. I wanted to finish this. I don't know, as much as I hate it, maybe I am the break taker. From that one meme. That's me. This guy on screen right here, this is me. Yeah, that's the gameplay. So, all that being said, I think it's the longest I've talked about the gameplay for one of these videos so far. Anyway, now we're going to talk about the story. The story has an interesting hook for this game. The name of the game is Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. And the 7 there is the 7 heroes. So in the past, there's the 7 heroes. The opening cutscene tells of this. The 7 heroes, they go through this whole thing and then they save the world. But then this game is about the 7 heroes getting revenge. You're like, what? What's that about? They're evil? Heroes can't be evil. That's like logically, that doesn't work. So it's a good hook to, you want to figure out what that is. You want to figure out why these heroes are evil. And you aren't quite sure if they are evil. You want to, are they misguided? What's going on? Are they being manipulated? You want to see what's going on there. There's a cool mystery. All RPGs need a good mystery to hook the player through to the end. This game has one. This thing I'm going to talk about, this is the big gimmick of the game. Kind of ties in with the generations thing, but the game is super open. I don't think I've played an RPG that's more open than this. Throughout the opening of the game, the first, 4 or 5 hours, it's kind of linear. You're set on this quest and, you got these named characters that are following you around. I don't know how much deviation you can do at that point. It's pretty set in stone, I think. Mostly. But then, after you do that stuff, after you do the main first dungeon or two, things start to branch out a little bit. You could either go to this town or this town. And I think one of the advisors says, Emperor, you can go wherever you want, but if you're looking for somewhere to start, I recommend you go here. But you don't have to. I don't think I did. I think I went to the other place first. But then once you do that, once you reach that destination that you choose, I'm pretty sure after that, it further branches out in different directions from the other first direction you could have went. It's kind of hard to describe when it's just, it's truly a branch. It starts to branch out in all these different ways and you can go back to earlier parts. It just gets so complicated of all the different places you can go. The world map really opens up and you can really start to go anywhere towards the later parts of the game. You chart your own path through it, and it's super interesting. Because even RPGs that, claim to be kind of open, they're not this open. This is really, really open. There's not really much of a main story. Or at least it's not guiding you from place to place. Each region you go to will have a main town that has its own little contained quest, usually related to one of the heroes, but each area is roughly, contained. And the way you choose to go through those is up to you mostly. It's almost roguelike in a way. Roguelike, each playthrough of this game could feel super different. This is really one of the only RPGs I could see myself doing a New Game Plus run of. Because there's just... When it comes to other RPGs, New Game Plus doesn't really seem that satisfying to me because most of the story is going to be the same. It's like all the same story beats. Thinking like, I don't know, Final Fantasy VII or something. There's not much room for variation in that. There's some choices in regards to like Tifa and Aerith and how who you choose to bond with more. But with like big picture story stuff, it's nearly all the same. You gotta go to all the towns in the same order. But in this game, you can do whatever. Like, I can't even imagine how many different playthroughs you could have of this game in regards to like which order you go to which town in. And there's a lot of variation in like the cutscenes in regards to when you choose to go where. You can even go back to some places. It's an interesting type of game. You know, you don't see many RPGs try this kind of thing. You know, nearly all RPGs are like, you know, Final Fantasy VII, where it's got this scripted story, it's got these scripted characters, and you're there for the story. It's the same thing every time. And this game isn't like that. It does have a main story. It does have, you know, some characters that you stick with. But, you know, this is the kind of game where you write your own story. And that's interesting. And I think it's done really well. But you really need to know what you're getting into beforehand. Don't expect Final Fantasy VII going into this. Like, it's genuine. Like, I didn't think about this before, but it's genuinely more roguelike than traditional RPG. At least in terms of, like, story structure. It's interesting. Just don't expect traditional RPG story. Related to that is the characters. And this really surprised me earlier. I don't want to say it surprised me, but it just... Well, I'll just tell the story. So you start the game, you know, you're playing as Emperor Leon, I think it is. That's who you're playing through in the main intro dungeon to the game. And you're doing it, it's fine. Eventually he dies. And his son, Gerard, he's like, okay, father, I'll take on after you, I'll rule this kingdom. And he goes out in the world to stop the 7 heroes. And like I said, you know, 5 to 6 hours into this game, you know, you're just fighting this final boss of the dungeon. And, you know, it's kind of climactic, but it's not super. You know, it's just like one of the 7 heroes. They don't make a huge deal out of it. Or maybe it's not even one of the heroes. Maybe it's just like a generic boss at the end of one of these dungeons. But I defeated it as Gerard, and I was like, yeah, let's go back to the throne room. But then it doesn't go back to the throne room. It just says, you know, 100 years later. And then I have to pick a new emperor. And that really surprised me. Because I knew this game was one of those games that you were going to play as a bunch of different emperors. You were going to play as a bunch of different characters later. But I was surprised it didn't make a bigger deal out of, you know, Gerard, kind of the main character, dying. Gerard had that relationship with his father. There was a big moment where Gerard's, you know, at his father's deathbed, and they make a big deal out of him dying, and you, the player character, changing to the younger character. But when that younger character dies, they don't do anything about it. It was just weird. And at that point, you're just playing as generic emperor, and you have generic party members. There's no real characters to grasp onto in this game. That's my big gripe with it, and I can't even say it's a fault of the game, really, because it's not going for that. It's not going for Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy, where you truly get to know a party and, you know, grow with them throughout this whole game. That's not what Romancing Saga 2 is. As far as I understand it, that's not what the Saga series is. It's not trying to be that. But in regards to what I like from an RPG, I don't like that there's no characters to grasp onto. In Final Fantasy VII, I love seeing Cloud grow throughout the game, how he develops. And you don't get that in this game. I guess there's the 7 heroes, you kind of learn about them. You know, throughout the world, there'll be like little memories you can gather where you'll see into the past, and you start to understand why the heroes became evil, you know, what led them to that point. So there's a little bit of backstory through them. Yeah, the 7 heroes, you get to learn about them through these cutscenes, like almost like Zelda's memories in Breath of the Wild. Just like little things you pick up that are flashbacks that flesh out the story of the past. But not much. And it's not who you're playing as. It's not these characters that you're seeing throughout the game. It's these characters that you don't really see. It's the bad guys. That might be interesting to some other people, but not me, really. I've said it a million times. I want characters that I can resonate with and grow with throughout the whole game. Throughout the whole 30 to 40 hour adventure. I want to see them get into situations and develop and have problems that they have to overcome. And you just don't get that in this game. And like I said, it's not the game's fault. It's just not for me. Maybe you'll like that. I didn't necessarily. Regards to spoilers, sometimes I'll have a spoiler section for these, but I'm not really feeling it for this one. There's not really anything to spoil. What you see is what you get when it comes to the story. So, we'll just skip the spoilers for today. The other stuff. This is a section where I like to talk about things that didn't quite fit into the other sections. And this is kind of a mild thing, but you can kind of feel that this game is lower budget. There was one cutscene specifically where I noticed, the voice acting was awkward. And one of the characters' volume is way too low. I almost couldn't hear what they were saying. And then the lines were cut off at the end. I don't know, you can just kind of feel it. Or some of the line delivery is weird. That one specific cutscene was bizarre in terms of just production. It was all over the place. Yeah, and the graphics are you can tell it's kinda budgety. But the art style is really good. I really like the visual aesthetic of this game. I feel like it looks real good. There's some environments that look real dingy, look real crusty, don't look the best compared to, any other super big AAA RPG out there, Final Fantasy 16. But, the art style makes up for it. This is a classic mid-budget game. This is something that would go so hard on the PlayStation 2. I was gonna say you don't really see games like this, but you kinda do. The AA gaming space, between AAA and indie games. Well, I've seen a lot of people talk about how the space for mid-budget games has kind of died out over the years. But hell, if anybody's keeping it alive, it's Square Enix. I learned that the developer that did this also did the Trials of Mana remake. And that's super exciting. I've been looking forward to playing that game for a while. I don't know if I want to play the Super Nintendo game first. I kinda do. I don't know. I might play the remake. That's neither here nor there. I like that this game exists. It's a mid-budget game. I got my problems with it in terms of production and the looks of it. You can kind of feel the lower budget, but it's perfectly serviceable. I'm glad this game exists. I'm glad there's a space for these types of games. It did well. I think it's reviewing really well on Steam. Let me look real quick. Because this seems like a super, niche type of RPG. Yeah, it says 93% ratings on Steam out of 3,500 reviews. Yeah, this is it just feels more niche, but there's an audience for it, and I'm glad that there is. I'm glad that this game sells well, where this developer will probably get more work. Oh my god, I just remembered that the Visions of Mana team got disbanded after releasing that game. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. I haven't played that game yet. I really want to. I got it sitting there. I'm gonna play it one of these days, but... oh man, I just forgot about that. So maybe there isn't as much space for these types of games as I expected. Yeah, I was just... went silent there for a second. I was just kind of reflecting and being sad. Well, whatever. I hope this developer's doing fine. I hope Square Enix is happy with how this game performed. That this developer gets more work. Because they did a great job. I just kind of want to go back and talk about the time skipping thing, the generations stuff with this game. Because it's super cool. I'm just now thinking about it, but this is... I've been playing a lot of games recently that are involved, time travel or seeing, alternate versions of places. I didn't even intend for that to happen. It just happened where I played Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger, this, and I think kinda the 2 RPGs I'm playing right now. So that's what, like 5 games that are all like kind of time travel or alternate world related. Regardless, I think the time skipping stuff is really cool. I've always liked, where you'll see an area in one context, and then you come back later, much later in the future or in the past or in another dimension or something, and you get to see it in a different context. I like games that do that, and this game does that. One of the interesting I'll just give an example so you can kind of see how this game handles that type of thing. There's one quest you come across where you go to this tavern and your emperor sees this dancer performing, and they're like fascinated with them. And then the dancer, she gets nervous and runs out the back. Your emperor follows them, and it's revealed that the dancer was a mermaid. And the mermaid's like, "No, you can't see me like this. We can never be together." And she goes into the ocean and swims away. But then, as the player character, you can choose to go out and find this witch in the woods somewhere or in a cave or something. And you can make a mermaid potion. And when you make this mermaid potion, the witch is very specific. She says, you can drink this to become a mermaid, but it's only for a limited time. If, however, you take this potion 3 times, you will become a mermaid permanently. You can take this potion, you can go out to where the mermaid is, and you can drink it once. The emperor will swim down to the ocean to go see the mermaid, and she'll be like, "You came to see me. You can breathe underwater somehow." And they start dancing and having a good time. And then your emperor will go back to the surface, and you can turn right back around, go back to the ocean, and choose to drink from it again. And you'll go back down, you'll have another good time. When you go back up, yet again, you can go back to the ocean. But before you choose to drink that potion, there's a little, reminder from the witch. It's like a flashback, where she says, if you drink the potion 3 times, you will never be human again. So that's kind of letting you know, if you choose to drink this potion 1 more time, you will be stuck as a mermaid. So me and my adventurous personality, I guess, I drank it. I had my emperor drink the potion a 3rd time, and he was forever a mermaid, a merman, whatever. So the emperor, spends the rest of his life with this mermaid. The screen fades away, and it's like the emperor was never heard from again. I just thought that was so funny. It ends, it does the time skip right then, where normally it's between big story beats. But your little play session as this emperor ends the 3rd mermaid potion you drink. And then, whenever you pick the next emperor, you can go back to that tavern where you first met the mermaid dancer, and there's another dancer there, and she's like, "Oh, have you ever heard the tale of the emperor and the mermaid? It became a legend. It's 120 years later or whatever." And she's talking about this legend that you lived through. And that's just so cool. And it turns out this whole little quest it's how you recruit the dancer class. So they wrote this whole little quest just so you can, as an excuse to, recruit the dancer class into your party or whatever. But the story behind that, the story they give you for the reason as why a dancer would want to join your party, it's super interesting. I loved that. It's all in service of recruiting the dancer class, but the story itself is fun. When I think of the story of this game, I bet when I think back to this, in a year or 2, that's probably what I'll think of. It's just a fun little side quest you can do, but it really sticks with you. I don't know, I just like mermaids. Mermaids are fun. Alright, with that, I think it's finally time to talk about the ranking. How does Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven compare against all the other RPGs I've played for the channel so far? I wanted to like this game more than I did. I think it's super cool. I think it does a lot of things really well. The gameplay is fun, the generation stuff is awesome. It's super cool how open it is, and you can chart your own path through the game. Super personalized, like no other RPG I've played before, really. I love a lot of the stuff this game does. but it's not really what I look for in RPGs. I want like a super compelling story, one that has a lot to say, that has like good theming, and I want good characters. I want characters that grow and you can like truly believe them as being real. This game isn't that. This game doesn't have like a super good story. It doesn't have super meaningful characters. And I don't really think it's for lack of trying. I think that's just not what they wanted out of this game. They didn't want it to have this super overarching narrative where everything connects and it all works out in the end. They didn't want these characters. They obviously didn't want you to have one party that you go through the whole game with, or else they wouldn't have done the generations thing, where characters die. That's just not what they were going for. So I can acknowledge that while this game is great at doing what it does, that's just not what I want out of RPGs. So when it comes to ranking it, now, I feel like I have to say this every now and then when I rank a game somewhat low. All these games I've played, most of these games I've played so far, are pretty dang good. Even Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is like my lowest so far, I think, outside of .hack GU. I'd say Xenoblade Chronicles X, even that game was pretty alright. I was relatively happy with that. So it's important to keep in mind that while Xenoblade Chronicles X is towards the bottom, I still think it's pretty good. There's a sizable gap in my mind between Xenoblade Chronicles X and .hack GU Volume 1. And I'm saying all that because I think Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven fits in right there, between those two games. I think the developers did a really good job with it, but it's just not what I want out of an RPG. And even though I'm saying that, I kind of do want to go back. I kind of do want to do the New Game Plus and experience the game in a different way. Even though it will be all the same stories that I went through the first time, I want to experience it in a different order. You know, maybe I'll realize that this game is even more open than I thought. Maybe some of the plot developments will happen in different ways because I'm coming at it in a different order. So even though this is like super low on the list, I still think it's a pretty alright game. If you're interested in this game, if anything I've said about what this game does well, if any of that's interested you, definitely check this out. It's super unique. I can definitely say that. It's very unique. Alright, that's it for Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. What will I cover next on the channel? What will be covered next? The game I started playing once I decided to drop Romancing Saga 2 before actually going back to finish it was Fantasy Life I. It's a cute little action RPG like, it's almost like RuneScape in a way, where there's all these different skills you can level up, and they all intertwine. It's super cool. I actually looked it up and, you know, chapter-wise, I'm kind of towards the end of the game, but I think there's a lot of, like, gameplay, you know, kind of grinding in between the chapters, so it might take me a while to finish this. And then I'm also playing, got two games going on here. I'm playing the Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. This I've been super excited to play for a long time. This is actually the first, like, HD 2D game I'm playing, I think. I bought Octopath Traveler a while back on the Switch, but I don't think I ever played it. This is the first one I'm like playing. It's definitely the first one I'm going to finish. So I'm going to finish this game. There's no way I'm dropping this. Or Fantasy Life I for that matter. I'm definitely going to finish that too. I just don't know in which order. I feel like Fantasy Life I might finish first. There's a lot of side stuff in that game. I might even want to wait until I finish more of the skills and all that and just goofing around doing non-main story stuff before I talk about that. Or Dragon Quest III, I don't know. I don't know which I'll finish first and which you'll see a video on first, but regardless, you're going to get an RPG video sometime in the future. Alright, I think that's it for this video. As always, leave a comment down below if you got anything you want me to ramble about in the future. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you, Pretizens, next time.